What is up, guys? It is me, Duke Farley, back at it again here on Lost at Sea, covering all things episode 2 of Ascendance Live Season 2. And what better guest to have the winner of the inaugural live season, Edmund. Edmund, it's good to see you. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. It is the end of Pride Month, had an eventful Pride weekend, a lot of sins to be made or had, whatever the saying is. Um, but yeah, I'm doing good. Thank you for having me, as always. I think this is my third time on the pod now, so I'm a veteran at this point.
Yes, recurring guest, of course. What a great guest to have. And I'm glad that you had a great Pride weekend this weekend, and that all the sins were great. So, with that being said, let's kind of transition here into this episode 2 of Ascendance Live. We got our first boot here, but we will certainly talk about Ryan. I did an exit interview with Ryan, so you guys can catch that on the page if you want. We'll talk all what went wrong there for Ryan, but right off the bat, we had these like wine rewards, right, from the previous episode. I think those were the first couple of things that we led into. Kind of a cool thing. It's kind of like a Survivor thing where you go on an exclusive reward with a certain amount of people. What do you think of that in terms of like strategy? Did you think those groups of 3 were going to be something that lasted? Obviously, Ryan was a part of one of them, so no.
I think it's a great way to dig your claws in right away and try and just get some allies right out the jump. I think what was really interesting about their group specifically is that each person was from a different team. So if I were those people, I would be like, hey, let's like kind of divide and conquer. And if we really want to make this work, we can come back together and work that way. Again, Ryan has departed us. So I don't know how well it's going to go for the florist. I think that was like the first alliance that's made this season and it's already broken. But I do enjoy Erica and Jake's dynamic because Erica knows Ascendance, but she doesn't know live games, and Jake knows live games, but he doesn't know Ascendance. So I feel like that could be a cool pairing, and I think the other 3 are super chill, level-headed people. They don't seem to be too worried about being a huge personality or like trying to like make sure everything they want known to be known, which I think makes them a threat of a trio. So I'm excited to see those 3 work together.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, like you mentioned, the first trio there got broken up literally in this first episode. And it's going to, and like you said, both of those trios were all on separate teams. So, one of them did not even attend the vote. I feel like the first vote is pretty critical in building those bonds, like you're voting with people, and we'll see how that kind of moves forward. The team's changing, but you actually were a part of this episode. So talk about like you were giving guidance on the people who won that reward. I think it was Kennedy and Jake, and kind of touch on what you were trying to tell them.
Yeah, so it was Kennedy, Jake, and Drew, I believe. And honestly, I think the big thing I wanted to just get my point across to be was that the way I played, the way I did my own thing is not going to be the way you play. I can give you tips on how to play Ascendance or play a live game, but I can't give you tips on how to actually what to do in the game because every situation is different. So I really just want to try and give him like uplifting, encouraging words because I know when I walked into that house the first night, I was super nervous and like kind of in my head. So I kind of just wanted to take them out of their head, say, you're here for the game, remember your goal, don't get caught up in all of it, but still make your mark.
Yeah, it looks like they all really took bits and pieces of what you said, and really it resonated with them. So it'll be interesting to see how that your words of wisdom there kind of help them out throughout the season. But we get the traditional first blind pick here, and the captains that are chosen are Erica, Hot Girl Chris, and Kennedy. Was there any shocks from those three on your end, or did you think that those are people that were going to get a majority of votes there?
I mean, I think in any group setting, Hawkrow Chris is going to make his presence known. So I feel like that was kind of an obvious one. I'm glad to see Erica up there, my 2 draft picks. Which, shouldn't I be getting points for these captain wins?
Last season we didn't do the blind pick. We didn't get points for
Okay.
the blind pick.
Because I thought I was racking up them draft points real quick. I was like, come on, team, good time gals. But yeah, I think it was kind of exciting to go to a revote that early with a blind pick challenge. Something I enjoyed more about this blind pick was that it was an actual blind pick. It wasn't go strategize and then everyone knows what's happening and people volunteer, kind of like season 1. I like that it was all around, like all across the board, because but it's truly a first impression at that point instead of people volunteering like Destiny and memes season 1.
And it seems like a lot of people got votes there. There was like a revote for that third spot between, I think, 4 or 5 people. So it was pretty close. But Kennedy ended up, clutching it. So they, on the spot have to pick teams like, any season. And they're divided by colors here. And we go into the, the challenge with the escape room. I thought that was fun. It was, interesting to follow along. There was definitely some huge personalities in some groups that took the forefront. But yeah, it was an interesting challenge at least, right?
Yeah, I think it was pretty obvious that blue team was gonna win. I just feel like people were taking more initiative, whereas the other 2 teams, more people were okay with taking the back seat because they didn't want to come across too strong. But like honestly, with the whole Keaton like wanting to color in the number thing, I was on Melissa's team at that point. I was like, girl, don't waste your time. What are we doing? Like, no magical number is gonna pop up, but of course it did. So I bite my tongue. But yeah, I thought it was pretty obvious blue team was gonna win. It was definitely a cool challenge. I'm glad they were supporting like a small business on Etsy, and I think it might be the same person that makes their pendants. I'm not completely sure, but I know they support small businesses on Etsy, which is good for exposure all around since like Ascendance is still trying to gain traction and stuff.
Yeah, 100%. But it was for sure an interesting challenge to follow. A lot of that moment that you mentioned was fun, and I don't know if that was specifically like the timing that like they needed between who's going to color in the number. I'm gonna fighting over that, but they end up losing. Was there any doubt in your mind that it was going to be a joint elimination, or did you kind of think that the entire time?
I did think it. I was in a live chat during the episode, so I was like, this better be a joint elimination. Clearly, I think it would have been more chaotic if they had to go to elimination separately because there's such smaller numbers. But I think with a joint elimination round 1, it's really going to test who you want to work with. I know we'll get into it, but I feel like it was very like team versus team at the beginning, which is kind of boring to me. I want to see y'all intermingle and create your connections because these teams aren't going to be the teams next round.
And I feel like this might be the most people attending an elimination ever, right? In Ascendance Live, 13 people. I think the first couple rounds were like just your team, like one team went, right?
Yeah.
And then your jury phase, I believe, was only 9 people, right?
Yeah, I mean, jury started at 11, but we were still split into 2 teams at that point because that's when I won the double. But yeah, then we went to 9. And even then, we still had a team at 9 because I was safe with Mark and Sarah at that vote. So yeah, I don't think we ever had 13 at one elimination.
Which is kind of crazy, right? Because there's 13 different votes going on, 3 people that are safe, 10 people vulnerable. So like, I don't know, it's kind of crazy to like read like where everybody's at. Like, I think the episode did a great job of following like kind of how the vote turned out. And
Mhm.
right off the bat, it kind of started, like you mentioned, team versus team, but then, they found a crack there.
Yeah, which is like kind of what I wanted. I mean, I think it would be iconic if it was like both teams stay together and like Hako Chris had the deciding vote. But I don't think that was very realistic, especially round one. I think a lot of people were timid, and you could see it with like the beginning of the discussion phase that they're like, oh yeah, our team's sticking together, but we don't have a name. We don't have a name. We don't have a name at all. And no one wanted to say a name because I think everyone's just trying to like self-preserve at that point. But like, I want to see some names thrown out. But then obviously like 6 names were thrown out by the end of the round, so it got kind of messy. But yeah, I definitely wanted people to be more outright with what they were thinking.
So I wanted to ask, like, is it different, like, per se, you being a captain in this situation? Like, say you're safe, say you're Hot Girl Chris, right? You're not on either team, right? So you could just basically like throw out a person that you want out at this point and have no repercussions because they weren't on your team? Or is it he kind of plays the like, you guys tell me role? Like, what do you think about that? Would you have played more offensively or played like kind of like defensively like he did?
I think in Hako Chris's position, I would play more defensively because it's round one. I don't really want people to say like, well, Hako Chris was the only captain that didn't have his team at elimination, and he was throwing out everyone's name and trying to get this to happen. If it was more so like later on down the line and like you need to get something done, I think I would play more offensively, kind of like how I did in season one. But I just feel like if I'm Hako Chris, it's none of my business. Y'all tell me, so that way I can collect information about how everyone's feeling and kind of make my mind up from there. Plus, Hako Chris is involved in a lot of the conversations, and I mean, granted, he should be, because if it's really team versus team, how they tried to make it seem to be, y'all need Hako Chris's vote. So tell him everything.
Right, and I'm surprised that if the people involved were really like gung ho about like preserve their initial team, why are we not having like a conversation with one team and then Hot Girl Chris and then like throw the name out from the other squad? Like, it never happened. Nobody ever told him.
Yeah, which is why I don't know if it was really a team versus team thing or if people were just using that to like kind of hide how they truly felt about where they wanted to vote. Because I feel like there was definitely a few people you could tell that weren't really brought up at all, and they were really the ones kind of navigating what was going to happen. People like Jodalee, Taisha, Chris with a K, because no one really ever talked about them, but they were in a lot of the conversations.
Yeah, and so it seemed early on, right, that there were teams from the red team, or people from the red team, that were getting their names thrown out: Melissa, Wesley, and Keaton. I thought for sure in the beginning of this it was going to be a Keaton boot here, just because everybody was talking about Keaton. And then, we get like word from a couple of like group conversations that, Ryan's leaking information from the wine reward. That's like the initial like thing that I saw that got Ryan's name out there. And then I thought the scene with Melissa where she's talking about how Ryan was like talking to her and somebody else and was like, yo, you're good with me. And then not moments later, a person comes in and tells her that somebody said Ryan's throwing her name out. So was it just kind of like a Ryan's spreading a whole bunch of shit and that's what got him? Or do you think it was somebody kind of going after Ryan here?
I think when your back is up against the wall, you have to act a certain way if you want people to actually trust you and being an ally to bring forward and like put their ass on the line for you, especially that early. And I think I'm kind of surprised because I would expect Keaton to act the way Ryan did in this situation. I thought Ryan would be the more level-headed one, but I think Keaton kind of stayed calm. I mean, of course, Keaton was running around looking for powers and being Chaos Keaton, but I think he stayed calm, and when he was talking to like those pivotal people like Drew and stuff like that, he kind of just said, he was calm. He was just very level-headed to where people are going to trust that more moving forward than someone who's more erratic, like how Ryan was acting. Because I feel like Ryan was just kind of throwing anything at the wall and hope it stuck. I think you have to have like a definitive plan of what you want to do to get through this round and how you can help people moving forward, which I think weren't the boxes he was checking for most people.
Right. And I believe were you interested in the fact that we didn't really get much of anybody that wasn't a part of the vote? It was basically everybody that was on these two teams, and we kind of got a little glimpse of, I think, Zoe talking to Kennedy, but other than that, everybody from that winning team was like, all right, we're going to sit this one out. Were you surprised nobody else chimed in, or, first round, don't really need to?
Yeah, it's the first round, but also I kind of said this in my catalog. Oh, the voice cracked. The catalog that I sent in of like answering questions. One of the answers I said was like, make sure to take time for yourself. Like if you have a moment with how fast paced the game is, make sure you take a moment to yourself and recollect your thoughts because it's easy to get caught up in like how fast everything is moving. So I feel like people were probably just taking a moment to themselves. They didn't want to get involved because it's like you said, it's round one. They don't want their name brought up and shit, which I wouldn't either. But I am glad that Zoe and Kennedy, we got that little conversation because it's true. If like there's a perception that people think that we are fighting or that we are enemies, I'm going to use that perception to our advantage because people aren't going to expect us to work together when really we could work together behind the scenes and get some shit done, but still keep that perception that people think we're always going after one another. Because I think if you have a known target, people aren't worried about where your head is at. They think they know where your head is at, to where people won't worry about you, which I think is smart for the two of them.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting to see if they end up actually, working together based off of that. But we end up getting a pretty clear-cut vote. I don't really know who voted, who the two votes for Wesley and the one for Melissa were. I know obviously one of them had to be Ryan, unless he voted for himself, which I'm not sure he would do. But, think from last season, right? You got one vote in the first vote, right? The William vote. And so Melissa and Wesley are kind of in a similar position where they receive, collateral damage, I guess you could say, from a clear-cut vote. And you went on to, win the game. So it's not that big of a deal for them that their names were out there real early, would you say?
I don't know. I mean, I think we have to see next episode how they react to them getting votes. But I think Wesley and Melissa knew pretty early on their names were out. But as long as they knew that Ryan was the one going home, it didn't really matter. Plus, I think they kind of handled it the correct way to just like stay level-headed and calm during the like strategy, like the talking phase, which I've heard in a conversation they had 30 minutes for discussion. 30 minutes. I never got 30 minutes in my life. We were three rounds deep in 30 minutes, okay? So I guess that's why it got so messy, because they had so much time. I feel like it would be I feel like it might be a little more across the board if they had less time. But there was definitely a lot of talking and like a lot of footage that was good for the episode with how much time they had, because we never got 30 minutes.
How much time did you guys usually get? Like 10 minutes per round?
10 minutes if we were lucky. For real though. But like that's why I think it'll cause more drama this season, because there's more time for people to compare notes. It was easier in season 1 to where like who was talking to who and who was saying what, to where you could shut stuff down and then the round's over. So it's kind of like time to go to the vote right away.
Was there any people you mentioned early in our like discussion here with strategy, people that were not, their names weren't brought up, the Taishas, the Jodelys, basically all of the green team except for Ryan and Drew at the end there. Is there anybody there that stands out that's like, okay, I see they're playing a little under the radar, but they're playing well socially? Like anybody that stands out to you here in this vote that is under the radar?
To me, it was definitely Thomas, I think. I think Thomas was the one involved in the most conversations. I think Taisha and Chris were also kind of in that league, but I think you could see Thomas being the one to actively go around to different groups and try and get their thoughts and put his thoughts into their ear. And no one ever brought up Thomas's name.
And Thomas, at the top of the episode, was pretty worried about his positioning of being picked last. And I agree with you. I think he had a great, opening round here. I think Chris with a K had a great round here too. I thought he was a part of a lot of discussions where a lot of moving and shaking was happening, and he seemed really calm under pressure to me.
Which is a good thing because he wasn't really the one steering things, but he was seen as someone who was reliable to know real information, not just being bullshitted to. And one thing I will say about Chris, I'm usually not one for a man bun, but Chris can pull off a man bun.
Chris with a man bun. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Go, Chris. All right. So Ryan eliminated 10 to 2 to 1 here. Gives the peace sign, or I don't know if he gives a peace sign or he blows a kiss, but very, very positive exit, which we love to see. Who do you think is hurt the most with Ryan, if anybody, leaving?
Oh, definitely Jodie. I think there like little moments right after the challenge. I don't know if it was before the challenge or what. Just them together in the room, like holding hands, and Jodie just like reassuring him, like, we're gonna be fine. We should work with Taisha. Like, let's chill. But I don't know if Ryan really took that advice to just chill.
I don't think he did.
I think Jodie was the one, and I do think Jodie was the one that voted Wesley with Ryan. I still don't know who voted for Melissa, but yeah.
Yeah, that's my projection too. I think maybe somebody else from that green team voted Melissa. Maybe Thomas. I don't know. But
green team is cursed. Like, season 3 people, before you play, if you're watching this, green team is cursed. You do not want to be on green team. I'll just tell you all that right now.
You guys lost a lot in season 1?
Green team lost every time.
Shit.
And green team still is keeping up that track record in season 2.
I feel like that's a thing in Survivor. The Orange Tribe always is like terrible or something.
Is it? I didn't know that.
Maybe, I'm not sure. I think I heard that somewhere. Okay, so let's do some projections here. I know it's really early, round 1, there's 17 players left, so really tough to, call your shot. But if you were to call your shot here of who's playing, like, who do you think's like in winner contention based off of this episode, if anyone?
I don't know if it was just because they were captains, like that was the reason why they were getting so much information, and like they were so calm because they weren't gonna get voted out. But I definitely think all the captains, Erica, Hako, Chris, and Kennedy, could be in contention because they were getting a lot of the information, but they obviously couldn't be brought up. But we could see like that could change next round based on who wins captain. What I did appreciate was like Erica got caught spreading information, and Kennedy as well, speak on both of them. Like, Erica got caught saying something about Wesley's name to Keaton, but they kind of like automatically met about it, discussed it, squashed it, and moved on, which I think you need to do in order to like maintain allies in this game. So I was glad they had the talk and they didn't just hold it against each other. And she was kind of just basically saying, it's because it was Keaton asking me, like it was just Keaton. So like, that's why I just said that to him. I did say that, but like it didn't mean anything because it was Keaton, which I think was a smart play. And then obviously we talked already about Zoe and Kennedy kind of squashing their beef and using that as a way to work together, which I think could be a lethal secret duo. Hako Chris is going to do what Hako Chris wants to do. And I died when Hako Chris was tying up his hair, braiding his hair during the strategy time. I thought he was about to show up to elimination, like ready to fight. Like, I'm tying up my hair, hold my earrings. So, yeah, I like those 3. I think we still need to see more from the blue team as well, since they weren't really in the episode.
Do you think that's more of a disadvantage for these people that weren't a part of the vote, the winning blue squad, or do you think, take safety whenever you can?
I mean, obviously take safety whenever you can, but if I have any knowledge or recollection of what happened season 1. Our green team lost round 1, but everybody on green team made jury after that first vote. Red team just got decimated in the pre-jury after the first round.
So could be a trend.
But I do think it's going to be more chaotic this season, especially if they keep doing 3 teams.
Yeah. Do you think they're going to keep doing 3 teams? Because theoretically they could have, I guess, 1 captain divided up again 666.
I hope. I mean, I think it creates more drama, especially if you have lower numbers this early. It's going to really solidify certain connections early on, where I feel like there was a lot of big group like saying and group mentality. I want to see more intimate like duos and trios be formed.
I do think that this is going to be a much more fluid game than season 1. I think you kind of can see it a little bit with like Thomas having a discussion about I think he even says it's going to be more fluid in the episode. And a lot of people are kind of alluding to, you know, these are just teams round 1, you know, we're going to be split up. So hopefully it does get more fluid, because that's when like Ascendance is at its best, I think. Not to say that season 1 wasn't great. I loved every moment. But we mentioned people that, you know, you think are going to do well. Who do you think's in trouble coming this next episode?
Definitely Keaton. I think Keaton just kind of has that stigma about him now going into these future rounds, because they don't have Ryan to kind of say Ryan's acting sporadic. I think they're going to use that as Keaton now, especially with Keaton like public power searching and running around freaking out. This might be a stretch, but I think I'm worried about Melissa. I think she is just kind of like so type A that she will just say what's on her mind and kind of like just like be very strong in her opinion, to where I don't know much about the girl, so this could be a poor read on my part, but I feel like she might not know what to say when in certain situations. I feel like she's just always kind of freely sharing her mind, which can help you in the long run because people will know where your head's at. Let's see, who else? I don't know. It's hard to say.
I will say, I do agree with your point on Melissa, and I would throw Wesley in that as well, because I'm not really sure exactly, you know, how his name got out. I think obviously the wine reward thing and, you know, Erica, whatever happened with Erica talking about Wesley. But I think that people like Jake has mentioned, you know, Wesley as somebody that they might potentially want to go after just because of the experience of hosting, and his name already being out there in the first you know, round, although he did do a great job at kind of snuffing that real early. But a couple people that I do want to give a shout out, because I didn't have really like rated high on like my draft board early, is Hot Girl Chris. I love Hot Girl Chris in this episode. I thought they played it fantastically. You know, getting the captain first of all, and then the way that they played it. I thought that your description of playing a little bit more defensively was perfect for this opening round. I think it was exactly what he wanted to do. And yeah, Thomas. I think Thomas played really well. So in terms of people going.
Sorry, I do want to touch on Wesley really quick. How you brought up Wesley. I know Wesley. I've met Wesley. So watching Wesley is very different, especially in this setting, because I didn't meet him in like a game. I just met him vibing as humans. So it's weird to see him because I think he's nervous. I think he's a little, not scared, but I just think he's worried about maybe his like reputation or just his past experience with these things, because he doesn't want people to just kind of pounce right away on him and say the minute he's playing super hard, well, it's because he's a live game host and he hosted the penthouse and blah blah blah. So I think he's trying to kind of take the more laid back approach in this, because he doesn't want people to use that as an excuse so early on, since people just kind of grasp at anything early on. So I'm excited to see if he kind of breaks out of this like weird funk, or if he's gonna like kind of stay in this mindset.
Yeah, it's always interesting because I feel like last season a good example of what you're saying is memes. I think memes went into your guys' season all in his head about what people thought about him, like
Mm-hmm.
game wise, as being chaotic and whatnot, and kind of just wasn't. He didn't play at like the game as fluidly as and like as well as he could.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because of for whatever reason he thought people would think some type of way. So it'll be interesting to see how Wesley does in the coming rounds with that. I thought he had a good bounce back kind of through
Mm-hmm.
that strategy portion, but it'll be fun to watch. But is there anything else in this episode that we haven't talked about that you want to talk about?
Let me look at my notes because I took a lot.
Sure.
Let me backtrack to the beginning of the round. So
Absolutely.
this,
Absolutely.
how do you feel about this laundry room alliance?
I don't think there's anything. I don't think anything's
Me
gonna come of that.
either. Me
It seems
either.
too loose.
Yeah, it was a little loosey goosey. So I don't know. I think it was just kind of like not a desperate, but just kind of like we're all here. Like let's just all kind of talk and touch base.
It's never good when it's like, oh, and these guys were walking by and then we pulled them in. I feel like that's never a
Yeah,
great foundation,
no,
right?
it isn't. But I would love to know what people in the live chat during the episode. They're like, so many talks happened in that laundry room. Like, I want to know what the washer and dryer knows because they heard everything. Um,
I want to know if Mark and Sarah ever found that idol in that laundry room or
oh my
something like that.
gosh. Well, actually, I think the only shot of the laundry room we have season 1 is when Erica gives me her join a vote power. Because that was the only place we could sneak in secret, because that was when like the whole box thing was happening, so they're trying to find the key and blah blah blah, and Erica's like, get in here, you need to come to the boat with us. But yeah, so I don't know how I feel about those 4. And also we didn't really see Carson. I feel like we haven't talked about Carson, and Carson was a part of this vote, no?
Yeah, Carson was a part of the vote.
Yeah, Carson was very, I don't mean this as shade, but invisible this round. I feel like we didn't really see a lot of Carson's thoughts or in a lot of conversations.
You would have thought, because just based on Carson's personality, he's like really out there. He would have been more involved, but I kind of like that from Carson early on, because I feel like if I feel like he could be a little bit too loud, and that could be like bad. So I kind of liked him, kind of like sinking back here. And
Yes.
his name never came up, so that was great. I will say that Carson was a part of a lot of like group
Yes.
and like one-on-one conversations that went on, which was great.
Mhm.
I thought although was a little invisible, I thought he still had a great episode.
Oh, for sure. I just feel like no one talked about him, which I think is kind of what you want round 1. Like, you don't really want to be the driver, but you don't want to be the one talked about. So I think that was good on his part. And kind of how you said, like, I feel like Hako Chris is just gonna be Hako Chris. Like, like Hako Chris is a loud personality, and people will always kind of use that as a way to put a target on someone for some reason, even though I don't feel like Hako Chris is like super game body in any sense. To where like someone with a loud personality like Carson is kind of just like chilling, which I think is what you want this early on.
Yeah. What do you think? Like Hot Girl Chris, I don't know much about Hot Girl Chris, so I'm intrigued by like if he gets into a power position, is he like a player that you can foresee like driving the boat like strategically? Because it seems like he might be able to have a decent like stranglehold on like an alliance, or like socially he'll be like involved. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
I think Hako Chris's social game is definitely the strongest part of his game, because he'll have allies, he'll do whatever. I've never played a game with Hako Chris, so I'm not sure how super strategic he is. But I do think that Hako Chris is going to do what makes sense to him, and I don't think if he does anything, if he gets in a power position, I don't think he's going to do anything that like tanks his game or does anything really like stupid into his game. I think he'll do something that makes sense to his game.
And not to mention, Hot Girl Chris does have the a clue, I guess, to a reward from the
Mhm.
auction where he has to crawl somewhere. And I don't know, he's kind of didn't like that, so I don't know if he's going to go for that one, but it'll be interesting to see if we get more on that power, I guess.
Do you know, I know there was a lot of talks about this Maddie alliance. I know we didn't really talk about it, but do you know who it all entails? Is it like that one team or?
So yeah, that I think is just the red team.
Okay.
And yeah, the red team. I don't know if Erica's involved in that. Maybe, I'm not exactly sure, but I know the red players or the red like people that were picked on that team, which I think could have legs. Um, but again, like early on, people are going to be, switching teams left and right. So I don't know. That's Melissa, Jodalie, Taisha, Wes, and Keaton.
Okay. Yeah,
And
see, I don't
Keaton doesn't
really.
strike me as a like firm alliance guy.
Yeah, no. I mean, nor do I think Keaton is going to be someone who's really protected by the Alliance. So
Right.
they kind of just let him be the target this round, which by all means, it's round one. I would let anyone be the target, even if they're a part of my Alliance. Um, but I don't know. It's going to be interesting because a lot of these people don't know Ascendance, but a lot also do. So I just feel like, is the veteran way of playing gonna prosper, or is the newbie way playing gonna prosper? Since so many newbies did so well in season one, to where sometimes being super strategic or like super well known in the game is not good for you.
Right. I based off of just those like newbie versus kind of like fresh to the game, I do think we have obviously there's like much more newbies in this season as opposed to last season. Um but I do think people like Erica, Drew, Jodalie, their game and Taisha, I want to put Taisha in that as well. Their
Mm-hmm.
games are very, very like if they get a couple rounds underneath them, I think they can go the distance, honestly. So I feel like they would need to get cut pretty early to not see them go far. Um, just based off of like how they played in their season, if it translates into the live version. So
Yeah, I think the thing about Drew is that Drew's name did get brought up. I don't know if Keaton was just kind of bringing that up as paranoia or if it was really thrown out. I don't really remember, but Drew didn't receive a vote. So, and I
super
don't know.
surprised on that too.
But wait, did Keaton not receive a vote either?
Keaton did not receive a vote.
Yeah, which is also interesting. I don't know. And Erica, I just think was very strong in the social game this episode. I think she wasn't trying to be a super strategic force. I think she was just trying to use her safety to establish connections rather than pushing a narrative.
Yeah, Erica definitely did have a really good episode. And I think she was probably one, if not the main force behind Ryan leaving, one of the main ones. So it'll be interesting.
Because of no, that was about Keaton. Because I was say because of her conversation about Wes, but that was Keaton, which is weird. I don't know. It's a lot to keep up with.
A lot to keep up with, but hey, that's why we have Thursdays to, check out what the hell happens. But Edmund, I do appreciate, you taking the time out of your night to come on Lost at Sea again, and represent, the draft, your draft team, of course. You didn't lose anybody, I don't think. Did you have Ryan?
I lost 6 points.
Well, that's
Or
just
however many the competition win points are.
that's just how we do it. If they
Uh-huh.
win this week, you'll
Rick
get the full.
Morris.
I don't know. Yeah. So, but with that being said, obviously, if you guys are watching this, hopefully it comes out sometime tomorrow, and you have a couple of days to kind of get ready for Ascendance Live episode 3, I believe. And I'll come back at you with another exit interview if somebody's eliminated. So, Edmund, appreciate you. I guess this is where we sign off. So.